Well, this morning, former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife are back in a Brooklyn detention center awaiting their next court date.
The two pleaded not guilty to federal narco-terrorism charges in their arraignment yesterday. In court, Maduro had a public outburst saying that he's innocent and was kidnapped from his home. In Washington, key Trump administration officials briefed senior members of Congress on the capture, but afterward, top Democrats said they had more questions than answers. And lawmakers are also split on whether the U.S. is at war and if Congress should have been consulted beforehand.
We are not at war. We don't expect troops on the ground.
Without question, this is war. They bombed half of Caracas and then removed him.
Their plan for the U.S. running Venezuela is vague, based on wishful thinking, and unsatisfying.
Two Republicans and a Democrat speaking there. This Thursday, the Trump administration will be meeting with representatives from major petroleum companies, including Chevron and ExxonMobil, to discuss how to deal with Venezuela's oil supply.
And President Trump has once again floated the idea of a U.S. takeover of Greenland. European leaders are taking the comments seriously following the U.S. military operation in Venezuela. And Denmark's prime minister stressed that autonomous Danish territory does not want to be annexed by the U.S. So let's continue in this conversation. Joining us to go more in depth is Juan Gonzalez. He's a former senior director for the Western Hemisphere Affairs on the National Security Council from 2021 to 2024. Juan, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And I know you've written some really great pieces on this. We've read them, and I understand that you saying Maduro being in U.S. custody is really just the beginning of this. So is stability possible in Venezuela, and what would that take?
Yeah, I mean, Maduro's arrest was definitely dramatic, but what we're watching now is something much bigger, a shift toward control, commerce, and unilateral power by the United States abroad and potentially at home. I think the question now is not whether the U.S. can act, but whether it can do so without losing the very rules that limit power in the first place. That was really the focus of my article. Right now, what we're seeing is chaos on the streets. There's been a a Maduro arrest crackdown by the current government that is in power. Delcy Rodriguez was his vice president. There was not a regime change. There was essentially an autocrat change. But right now, what they're doing is they're arresting everybody who was suspected of helping with the Maduro operation, and they're going after journalists, and they're going, I think the oppression and the crackdown has increased significantly. I think that gives us an insight into how complicated the dynamics are inside of Venezuela. Even for example, oil companies going in are going to have to deal with non-state actors that are very well trained and are experienced in fighting insurgency battles just, in the country next door in Colombia for over 50 years.
Yeah, the journalist thing you bring up, developing this morning, taking cell phones, laptops, that type of thing from journalists in that country. Something else making headlines this morning that I want to talk to you about. The main opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, speaking out this morning. She spoke to Fox News saying that she's vowed to return home quickly, praised the U.S. President Donald Trump for toppling her rival Nicolas Maduro. But at the same time, it seems that the president is looking to work with the interim president in Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez. So what's going to happen here if she does return to the country?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Delcy Rodriguez is now the acting president, meaning the core power structures remain intact. I think from the perspective of the administration, it avoids immediate chaos. It keeps the oil flowing and allows the U.S. to claim order without confronting the hardest political trade-offs. I think if she goes in, the question is, can she rally protests against Delcy Rodriguez, who right now, you got to understand, Chavismo, meaning the group that has been governing the country for around 26 years, is not a monolith. It is a coalition, and a lot of these actors are right now vying for control. What is Maria Corina's role in that, I think, is an open question. Certainly, what Trump has said and Secretary Rubio have said is that they're going to continue to work with Delcy Rodriguez because their number one priority at this point is the oil inside the country. They've not really signaled any sort of process around elections. So the question is, are there going to be elections in Venezuela? I believe there may be, but not until the United States has basically taken over Venezuela's natural resources.
Absolutely. And let's talk more about that, because that is the big underlying story when we're talking about this change of power. It does seem like a Western grab for access to resources. What does history tell us about what the U.S. is doing here?
Well, I mean, there's a long history of the U.S. intervening for those reasons, and perhaps there's day one exuberance, but they don't tend to end well in Latin America or in other parts of the world. Certainly, we did this in Iraq. I think this administration has derived a lesson from Iraq in the sense that they're avoiding de-backification, meaning taking apart all the institutions of government to be able to maintain some sort of control. But I think the concerning part is that this scenario really fits perfectly with the administration's more mercantilist instincts. That they've been explicit about oil contracts and payoff. Chevron stays, ConocoPhillips goes back in, but it'll be much more complicated. And some of the press reporting that I've seen over the last day or so suggests that the majors in particular are not racing to go in because they want some sort of legal certainty. I mean, Donald Trump is going to be in power, through the end of this administration. If you have a Democratic president, they may have a completely different set of priorities. And I think oil companies are going to want some certainty. They're also going to want security because the experience in Colombia in the late 90s was car bombs going off all over Bogota. These same illegal actors exist inside of Venezuela. And so the dynamics inside of the country are very well not unresolved, and there's a very high risk of there being fragmentation and violence in the country, which will be very difficult for oil companies to operate in.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Colombia because I think a lot of people concerned specifically about that country right now with the conversation around potentially going in there next. There's been discussion also this morning about Greenland. Some lawmakers saying that they didn't think that was serious. Now it seems it's becoming more serious. Can you just talk about what this now sets as a precedent?
Well, look, this approach puts the U.S. at the same table as, I would say, China and Russia when it comes to spheres of influence. China dominates its near abroad economically, and they've been focusing on maybe going into Taiwan. Russia is, going into Ukraine, and now the United States is doing the same. So I think when Trump talks openly about possible strikes in Colombia, that's not just bluster. It's a worldview where powerful countries are going to be carving up their neighborhoods. And I think that's very difficult. And frankly, it doesn't really stop at the water's edge. I think a lot of the legal logic that the president had been using is expansive. He claims that the power to designate people as terrorist combatants unilaterally, which is the basis for the unilateral strikes against the boats. These are if they're allowed to stand, right, without congressional authorization. It's something that could potentially have domestic implications.
All right.
So many implications from so many different moving parts of this. Juan, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.